Nice.
Learning.
So, welcome back to the second edition of the Hustlemode podcast. I'm your co-host Neil Prasad. Joined with me tonight again is my colleague
Jason Rule. Hello,
Jason
hello.
Rule.
That's right.
Jason,
Yes,
it's
sir.
nice to be with you again here today. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for taking the time on a Sunday, no less.
Yeah, well,
to
the
have a
hustle
conversation.
the hustle never stops, right?
Hustle never sleeps. I think that's a quote, right? Somewhere.
I don't know. We're gonna have to look it up. We're gonna need somebody to start keying in those things.
We need a fact checker, somebody who looks stuff up while we're talking. It's like, hold on a second, runs away, scurries, and gets some facts in line while we talk to the people.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm glad that we're continuing our conversation. I think the first conversation that we had really set the foundation for us to get things moving in the right
Agreed.
direction. And
Mm-hmm.
I think our listeners and our viewers are going to be grateful that we're taking the time sort of to just share a little bit more about who we are as individuals,
Yep.
as well as family men and businessmen, so on and so forth. But I think that holistic, well-rounded approach is going to add some value just so that individuals can sort of resonate with who we are and determine whether or not they want to stick around.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely our goal is to make sure that people get value from the time they spend with us. So whatever we can give, I'm open to provide as much information as people need and share as much as I can.
I think, excuse me, I think it's best for us to actually just continue where we left off. I know we kind of cut things off abruptly midpoint, or at least a little short, I should say, with respect
Yeah.
to our career journey. And I know that you had mentioned, I don't recall if you had mentioned where you were per se, but maybe you could just sort of round off the last lap, so to speak, and figure out exactly how you came to be where you are here today.
Yeah, I think when we were chatting last, I was going into the details of the transition from working for a large corporate customer or large corporate entity, Bank of Montreal, to more of a grassroots startup type of environment with my own business, and how that transition started. So it's the classic. I can say it's the side hustle turning into a full hustle, where I was 9 to 5ing as much as I could, and then 5 to 9ing after that to try to build up enough stability and size in the side hustle business to make it a full-time gig. Whether it be getting our revenue up, making sure that we had a good base of customers, making sure our expenses were minimized, and just having an overall good foundation to transition over to. So working in a financial institution, you do have that security and that stability. There's only 5 banks in Canada, so the stability is tremendous. Where you think that jobs are not lost. Like I don't remember the last time. While there has been instances with the pandemic and whatnot of layoffs, but rarely are they in the financial sector here in Canada. Like it's a pretty stable sector, so you're not really experiencing a lot of mass layoffs or people losing their jobs to a high level. So going from that security to working in for myself was a huge jump, and made that shift probably toward the end of 2019 with the hope of running 2020 straight through, and obviously the remainder of 2019 as an entrepreneur, somebody who had their own business, who gave themselves a paycheck, who was able to run a lot of things on their own. So that's the transition, the jump I made around that time. It was scary. There was a lot of questioning and doubt. Will I make enough money? Will I be able to feed the family? Like what could possibly go wrong if things don't go right? So it was one of those talk to yourselves, question yourselves. And the great thing is that my wife supported it. She saw all the time that I was putting in at both jobs, the side hustle and the primary. And then I got to the point to tell her, hey, you know what? I'm making as much money on the side hustle as I am with my full time. And if I just did one, I would have more family balance. I would have more time to just focus on that one thing. So she supported the move. So I made the move, as I mentioned, toward the end of 2019 and said, you know what, full-time bank job, cool, but I'm out. I'm going to go run my own business. And the thing that was really killing me with the bank job was time. Like, because at that time we hadn't shut down, right? Pre-pandemic. So I was running all over the place, running downtown, running midtown. I went to Montreal for one event. We went down to Chicago. Like, we were everywhere. And the amount of time it was taken away from my family and time it was taken away from running the business made it not worth it. So, time and the 9 to 5 was starting to drain and put strain on the 5 to 9. So yeah, I took a detour and left that and went directly into running iLeap, which I'm doing today. We'll get back to some of the other pieces, but yeah, I just wanted to tell that little bit of a story because there was a good message in there of just believing in yourself and wanting to take the risk of trying something that you kind of are familiar with. Your side hustle, you're familiar with it, you know it inside and out. So it's not as much of a risk as quitting your job and opening a franchise or doing something like that. You're definitely experiencing something different, but it's
Yeah,
something you know well.
it's a little bit of a risk. I mean, come on, let's be honest, right? I mean, how long were you in the side hustle phase? You
Um,
have to look back. Just guesstimate.
I'm gonna say about a year or two, about 2 years, about 2 years.
You were in
Um,
2 years side hustle phase
yeah, yeah,
before you transitioned.
but you got to think about it though, Neil. Like, revenue wasn't. It was average. It was low. It was hobby. It was like a hobby status. Like, I worked on it when I could. I build customers when I could or remembered. It wasn't a clean business. And the benefit I had is I found a partner that was more administratively strong than I was. So she was able to take over the reins of that operational side, which I was not good at. And we could talk about complementing your talents and skills at another time. Like, there's a big value in that, I think. But that person, that individual who took over that aspect of what I was weak at, did a good job in organizing it, which allowed me to get the side hustle to a more established place. Like, sometimes that's the tipping point, right? Just finding the right person in your business or having an event happen that really just pushes you in the direction that you should have been going in the right all along.
So I'm glad you brought that up. As far as I don't want to say pushing, but let's call it crossroads, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you were. I mean, you're fairly successful being at the bank, right? We don't have to get into specifics, but
Mm-hmm.
you obviously identified that you were bringing in as much as you were from your 9 to 5 than you were at your 5 to 9. So
Yeah.
with respect to the transition part,
Mm-hmm.
was it the family strain, the balance, so to speak? Were
Yeah,
you burnt
because
out, or like what was it that said, okay, you know what, this is time?
yeah, so and what most founders will do with their side hustle, depending on the type of business they're in, is you really don't pay yourself. You don't really give yourself a salary because you already have your full-time salary. So you bootstrap it as much as you can, and you reinvest the money in the business, and you use it for just keeping the business afloat. So because I was doing that, I wasn't double dipping. I wasn't taking any money out of the business. But then we got to the point within the business, the side hustle business, to look at it and say, wait a second, I'm making as much money here as I am there. So then, I could double dip, but then I would be putting in half the effort in two places when I just put all the effort in one place. So that was a big tipping point for me, is to say, okay, well, if I'm spending as much time in one place and then spending the same amount of time in the other and splitting my time, it became a money and time thing, right? Like, what's your time worth? So I ended up just making that transition to say, you know what, I'm going to spend the money and the time doing my side hustle as a full time, and I'm just going to drop the full time, take the risk. That's what it boiled down to.
You politically danced around the answer and the question. So, like, what was the point? What was the tipping point? What was
Well,
the
the actual
aha
incident,
moment that was just like, yeah,
I
I
think the
mean,
money, the money got messed up. Like, at the bank, they pay you well, as I mentioned. But the taxes, man, like to seeing the taxes and seeing the fact that, yeah, maybe you're getting paid six figures, but at the end of the day, your taxation is going to be like 40% or 35 or whatever percent it is. But then on the corporate side, I'm 20, 15, and then I can claim a lower salary for myself and pay less tax, and then claim more dividends and pay even less tax on it. So I think that the money, like looking at the money, and you look at, and if you're an entrepreneur, you can easily do this calculation. You say, okay, corporate job making six figures but getting taxed 40%, so I'm really making maybe 60 grand. Whereas if I work for myself, my taxation was lower, maybe I make 80 grand, but then I keep most of it. It's that calculation, I think we were talking about before, where you look at job versus business and you say, well, with my business, I can write off all these things before I pay tax. Whereas in a corporate world, you pay all these taxes, and then you're able to go out and generate expenses. So if you look at the comparison is, I'm paying all of my expenses before I pay tax. And when you're an employee, you're paying all your expenses after you pay your tax up front. So then at the end of the day, you look at your bottom line number, you're left with a lot less money when you're an employee, because you paid all this tax and your money that you have in hand is a lot less. Whereas you're in the corporation, you're basically getting all your expenses, then you're paying tax. So then at the end, you're netting out to be more money in your pocket. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, as soon as the money got messed up, I knew it was time. So hopefully that's not too politically correct. That's more
No. It's
direct.
just straight goods, man. You know what I mean? Like,
Great.
let's not dance around it, right? Let's just keep it real. So again, none of this
Yeah.
stuff is scripted. So I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're keeping it open and honest and fully transparent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So okay, well, let's flip this a little bit then. So that's my journey, and kind of the transition from one big stop to a more current state. And there's some changes that have happened recently. But what I want to get into with you, because I think when we chatted last, you talked about working for a family business and growing it to a level and having it become successful with a bunch of growth that they experienced. And then you went to another digital marketing agency where, from what I remember and understand, you had a really good connection with the leadership. You had a relationship with the owner, the gentleman who started the firm, and you really just crushed it there. Tell me about that. Like, tell me about how that transition happened, going from one digital marketing agency to another one, and then again replicating the Neil magic with them that you had from the previous job. Tell me a little bit about how that all went down.
Well, I think it was just it's just organic, right? Like, as far
Mm.
as your aspirations, I think we spoke a lot about legacy before.
Yeah.
Any organization that I've been at or touched, there's been some type of legacy that I've left behind, so to speak, right? And I'm not
Mm.
saying that, I'm saying that in the most humbling way. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I don't think I'm, the business gift of the gods of that sent down. It's just I just look at
The touch of the Neil God business.
the,
Here I am.
the Titans, right?
Titans.
No, it's just I just look back, right? It's good to
Mm.
look back and just see, like, okay, wow, look at where this was when I started, and look at where it ended up when I left. And I think that says a
Mm.
lot, right? But from that other agency, I actually moved on um, after about 2.5 years, and I um, I ended up working at a private school, actually, for about 6 months,
Mm.
and that was
So a break
interesting.
from digital marketing, just out of the industry entirely, Neil. Like or was there aspects of it where you moved to after that still had digital marketing and some of that creativity that you brought in those other roles?
It's a great question. It's funny. Like, we all make decisions for whatever the factors that impact our lives, right? And during that time, when I was at the second agency, actually, I was having my second kid. To be honest, when our firstborn was arrived, I
Mm.
actually I didn't take a break for the first 3 months, and I totally regret that. Right.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had my wife that was very supportive, and she was thrilled with our son, but fast forward, he's going to be 4 this year, and I missed
Wow.
like the first few months of his life. And that wasn't because work had instilled that. That was because I was trying to lay a foundation in order for it to be continuously successful.
Got
So
it.
it was on me. It was on my bad. But like when I made the transition for the second agency to the private school, the caveat was the owner was going to give me a free ride for um, my kid's education. So it was the next 10 years comped as part of the package. That would equate
Sounds like a
to
sweet deal.
a little over $500,000 in a private school education that I wouldn't have to pay out. Um, so, you look at certain things, and
Mm,
if anyone's worked in digital marketing or an agency, they realize there's certain expectations and pressures and challenges that come within that environment as a whole, which we can sort of get into in another discussion. But
yeah.
realistically, I think I was burnt out, to be honest with you. I was on 5 or 6 different boards, two
Mm.
kids. I have 2 kids right now that are under 4 years of age, right? So it's very challenging, to
Yeah.
say the
God bless
least.
you, man.
You know,
God bless
you've
you.
you've been down this road a lot sooner than I have,
Yeah.
right? So
Had a
you
lot
can
more
look
energy
back.
though, because I was a lot
Yeah,
younger.
100%.
Yeah.
Dude, I was talking with a friend of mine, a little sidetrack, but I was talking with a friend of mine the other day,
Mhm.
and we were just exchanging chats, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be 44 this year, and he's like, Neil, you're gonna be 45 this year. I'm like, dude, I totally missed the year. I
You
was
left
like,
left it out of your memory, gone,
it's just
just
gone. You know what
blacked
happened?
out.
COVID. So basically, if you have any birthdays during COVID, it doesn't count, right?
Oh, okay,
So yeah,
good,
yeah. So
good.
you just
Yeah, yeah.
you wipe them
I had
down.
one at the beginning of COVID, just before the world shut down, so before March, and
Yeah,
then one obviously a couple weeks ago. So I've had two COVID-ish birthdays, 2020 and 2021. So yeah, amen. So
yeah,
I'm almost I'm still kind of 40 then, so it's
yeah,
perfect. Yeah, it's great.
yeah.
Relive
So
those years.
anyways, going back to that, I was just like, it was time for me to just turn it down a notch. I needed to
You mean
shift
going to
my.
the private school? That's where you determined that was the time. That was the move or the event that said this is this is Neil Prasad taking it from 11 down to like 6 or 7.
You got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, straight regular hours. 8 to 3, right? Like
Mm,
it's Christmas. I had like 6 weeks off. You know what I mean? It was it was coast time. I don't mean that with any disrespect. Still putting in my time, right? Still trying to achieve. I think I did over
mm.
$400,000 in contracted revenue in less than
Wow.
4 months, right?
Yeah.
And I was just getting to learn the business, so like the impact wasn't felt the way I think it could have been.
Yeah.
Secured a $10,000 in fundraising initiative within a week. So there were certain levels as far as legacy that was continuous, but
Yeah.
there wasn't a longevity there because it wasn't the right fit, right? And if you like, I mentioned to you the other day, it was just like four different jobs in the last 5 years, not by choice. Some of it by choice, I guess, depending on the career journey or path. But I'm not one of those guys to chart it out, and have everything figured out. I think if anything, life is fluid, right? Like you
Yeah.
just you have to figure out
That's for sure.
go with the changes, right? I think I've been comfortable with the uncomfortableness of being in new positions and new situations. If anything, it's taught me how to
Mm.
adapt and how to be nimble and sort of apply a new set of skills and an understanding and expectations from leadership, depending on who you're working with.
Well, you know what? It's good on you for trying something different, right? That's the thing that I can really point to is that you changed your mindset to say, well, I know this space, I understand digital marketing, I understand its principles and how to better and how to approach it in a very complete way. But there's this thing that maybe I want to try and see if I am able to excel in. And And I think, unfortunately, as you're saying, it wasn't the right fit and the timing. Maybe it's not the fit and timing. Maybe the right timing wasn't there because maybe, a person who was in a role was still in the role when you got there, or there wasn't the right role that hit all the boxes for you as it related to your skill set or related to what they were ready for. You got to think of it too. Like, you can't necessarily say that it was maybe not the right fit. Maybe they just weren't ready. Maybe they weren't ready for what you brought to the table, or maybe they weren't ready for some of the skill sets that were needed to grow their business, right? Like, it's all, to me, I'd say a lot of the stuff with wrong fit and people not doing well in roles, it's fit, but maybe sometimes, depending on the individual, the company's not ready for them, or the individual's not ready for the company. So there's a give and take, a push and pull between fit and readiness that I always look to say, well, why is this person not doing well? Or why is this person rubbing people the wrong way? Or why is there not acceleration in this person's career? Well, there's a bunch of different factors. Like, everybody, and I remember somebody telling me this a couple of years ago, is that everybody they have the intent of doing their best. Whether they're able to execute their best or whether their best comes through, that's a whole other thing. But if a person's there in front of you trying to do a job or trying to be something, they have the intent of doing their best. They may not hit the mark, but the intent is there. So got to look at it from that perspective. But anyways, a little bit of a long interpretation of what you just told me, but I think it's good for um, context around this whole conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with you, right? Like, it is a two-way street, right? So, but I think at the end of the day, having been in this position for, 5, 6 times now throughout my career, I have a quick understanding as to, what I can and cannot tolerate, so to speak, and
Yeah.
whether or not the environment is going to shift or alter or sort of accommodate the growth
Yeah.
based on the expectations, right? So it's just interesting to see, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I'm grateful for the opportunity, because then it taught me, what I can't live without, right?
Mhm.
And which takes me back to where I'm at right now, right?
You
Which
can't
is
live. Well, hold on. You said something. I can't let you go on this one. But you said it lets you know what you can't live without.
100%.
What is that? I can't live
Bro,
without.
you know this more than anyone, that like
Mm.
it's the thrill of the hunt, right? Like
Got
when
it.
you're in sales, that job was sit
Yeah.
back, throw a whole bunch of
They
marketing
present the meat to
dollars
you.
into
It's
the
like,
wind.
here,
Yeah, it's like
here.
come into the dragon's den and sit down and we'll have a conversation. Dude, I was walking out with stacks of cash like this from international families, taking it back into the finance department, and everyone's looking at me like, where's this kid getting all this money from? Sissy kid. Where's this guy getting all this stacks of money from, right?
Yeah.
And it's just funny, right? But it wasn't it's the thrill of the hunt, bro. That's all I gotta say. It's like you're
Yeah.
chasing
The
it and
challenge.
you want to have the next sort of euphoric moment where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, great. Like this is an account that I want to pursue, or this is a relationship that I want to develop, and I want to see how I'd be able to
Yeah.
create that sort of campaign or opportunity for this client to see the benefit of working with an agency or working with
Mhm.
a service that we provide, sort of thing. So that's what I can't live without. And the mere fact that, meeting new people and having new relationships and new challenges, right? Not
Yeah.
to say that
Yeah.
I couldn't have it there, but it's just different, right? I
Yeah.
would, if somebody was to ask me, I would classify that role as being more of an inside sales farming
Okay.
mentality in
Yeah. Yeah.
comparison to an outside sales hunter mentality, right?
Mhm.
And it's different, right? When you're in the
The
game,
hunter's gonna
the
hunt.
difference, right? Exactly, right? You can't cage a lion, bro. I mean, they can at the zoo, but it's still not the same.
Still not the same. Well, cool. And I don't want to get into a long, boring story here, but I was listening to again a podcast. Of course, you got to listen to what you promote. And one of the things the folks were talking about is the difference about human evolution and the whole thing about if people were always comfortable and happy, we wouldn't evolve as a society and wouldn't evolve as a species, because we'd all die off and get killed, right? It's, the folks that are uncomfortable, who are distrusting, who are questioning and pushing the envelope, is the reason why humans are as far evolved as we are. You imagine that, like, if you're happy-go-lucky, you're not really thinking about what danger could be around the corner. You're like, oh, that rustle in the bushes, that's not a lion, that could just be the bushes. But if you're questioning, you're challenging, you're skeptical, you're distrusting, you have let's say I could say a chip on your shoulder. You're always questioning. Yeah, well, maybe that is a tiger in the bushes. Maybe I should get my spear ready in case that mofo jumps out, right? So it's a mentality, but it's also, when you look at it from a hustle perspective, if we don't hustle, we die, right? It's what's the word? It's primal in our DNA as human beings. So, anyways, small tangents. um Anyways, so cool about the I like the this journey about transitioning to different roles and trying something new. So bring it back for me now. So you decided that the school and all the education stuff, wasn't a fit for you. So what happened next? Like, where did you decide, like, what was the mind frame of your next move that you made after the private
You
school?
know, yeah. So, I mean, after those 2, 3 little jumps, I decided to figure out exactly where I was going to end up next. And I
Mhm.
started, working my network and, asking some questions. And it's odd because I had breakfast with a gentleman way back when. And I had reached out to him through LinkedIn, and he knew of an agency that was looking for someone like me. And two and two, I ended up downtown. I swore I was never going to be downtown, but ended up downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rat race, right? But here's the thing: I negotiated a 1 day a week, right? So I work from home for the most part. I check in with the
Pre-pandemic,
team
right? Before
pre-pandemic,
work from
100%.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I work. I'm physically in the studio 1 day a week in order to just check with the team and sort of have that FaceTime, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um,
Got it.
but now it's like we're all working from home, so I prefer this anyways. It's easier, right?
Yeah.
It's more accommodating to sort of my ebb and flow, right? And
Yeah.
so now to come full circle, I'm at a design agency. We do a lot of stuff with EGD, environmental graphic design, and all things
Mhm.
related to branding and wayfinding solution, placemaking, space making. If you're not familiar with any of these terms, which I was not from the outset. So
Yeah.
um, the
It's like a
the
different level of digital marketing. And I think you're saying that it crosses over to the physical a little bit more than what you did before.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, we play in what's called what we like to refer to as the fourth dimension. So
Mhm.
we like to instill a felt experience for the audience that we're serving, and that can be physical, digital, virtual, or any combination thereof. What really drew me here was the interactive media component, which is what I was hired on for. So like digital touchscreens, kiosks, LED media walls, um, motion sensor, projection mapping, AR VR integration. Really is like
Mm.
some cutting edge shit, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
every day that you get to even have discussions surrounding these types of projects that are going to be incorporated into institutions or corporations or public spaces. So um, the allure of the sort of one in a million or the needle in the haystack. Um, I think it's funny because when I look back, when I was at different positions in my career, there were services that the marketplace wasn't quite ready for,
Yeah.
and it took a few years for it to actually scale to have an acceptance. And then once it hit, it was like, okay, full board. Like it's like a
Yeah.
faucet opening up, right?
Like a freight
And
train coming through.
yeah, and I think right now, I mean, there's some people that get it, but for the most
Mhm.
part, they have no idea what I'm talking about when I'm referring to what we're doing.
Yeah. It makes the conversations more of an education for your prospect, because you're showing them something that they could imagine, or something that they could possibly do based on the technologies that are in existence, or maybe even based on a past project that you guys have conducted. So it's a different mind shift where, some traditional sales roles, you're showing them something that they know and understand. Like you're showing them a commodity that they could possibly pick up, or a service that they can consume. If you're not dealing in those defined lanes, it's a challenge. Like you're painting a picture almost every time. You're not
You got it.
showing pictures like some sales roles, right? Where it's like,
No,
okay, here's what you're gonna buy, here's what you're gonna get.
yeah,
Whereas here you're like, okay, here's the canvas.
it's blank.
It's blank.
Some people have a hard time with that. Even on the reciprocal
Yeah.
side, the so-called client or prospect, you can't show them a blank canvas. Some people are like deer in the headlights.
Yeah. I want
There's,
to buy
there's,
something. Like, I can't
what?
buy the canvas. Like, put something on it. Well, what do you
Yeah,
want on it? It's the
exactly.
what's that? The
Uh,
who's on first
who's on
conversation,
first?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
well, I don't know who's on first. Well, I thought who was on second. No, who's on the outfield? It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
confusing paradigm for people to consume. It's like, well, they don't get it until they understand it, and they don't understand it until they get it.
That's
And
it.
yeah, it's a circle.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's an interesting set of circumstances that got you to the new design, the new world of create. So in this role, because you're very much at that bleeding edge at times, what did you think up to this point? What's the biggest thing you added to your Neil Prasad arsenal that you maybe didn't have before in your digital marketing world? Like, what's the biggest thing you think you added?
wow, that's
Skill.
deep, bro.
Yeah, it's, hey
That's
man, I'm go deep cuts, deep cuts. This is the what skill can you now tell people that you're better at now than you were coming in? Because come on, like you've been there how long now? What's your time frame?
is March 21st today.
Yeah,
I've
two
been
years,
there. No, man, I've been there. What? Uh, 14 months.
14 months. Okay, so in
Yeah.
14 months, what skill sets have you added? Like what thing can you point to say I didn't do this well before, but now I got this. Like this is my
Honestly, if we're gonna go this route, I think I think patience is the strongest skill set that I've learned. My wife is gonna she'll beg to differ, but I think professionally speaking,
mm,
uh, patience. Yeah, the
mm,
the we all want things to happen before they're ready to happen.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
gotcha.
And I think you want to hit the ground running. You want to prove yourself. At least for me, anyways. Right.
Always, yeah.
The first 3, 6, 9 months are critical or crucial to sort of positioning
Yeah.
yourself in a firm and
Well,
understanding what you bring to the table.
yeah. Use the analogy of prison, right? You want to find the biggest guy in the yard, punch him in the
That's it.
mouth, establish yourself, and
Yeah.
then the rest is just uphill from there, right? But if you walk into the yard, there ain't the biggest guy there. It's just you.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out, and you got to have that patience. So the prisoners keep rolling in,
Yeah.
and you can establish dominance.
Yeah. No, I think patience is key, but also just understanding.
Yeah.
It's not like you said. It's not that I'm everything we do is 100% bespoke. So like
Mm,
it's nothing's off the shelf. Nothing is set it and forget it. Like it's all
wow.
100% catered to the client based on their needs, direction, and
It's a
budget
tough
as
business
well.
model. It's a very tough business model. And success, obviously, 14 months, and like you mentioned, the team's growing, or the team grew by a couple bodies. They must be doing something right. It's a tough game to be in when everything that you make is to spec custom to what the customer wants, or what you want the customer to have. It's that Apple kind of Steve Jobs type of mentality, right? And what's that analogy? How does that go? It's when you ask people back in the 1900s what you could do better, or what if you ask people who wanted transportation what they could build. They said, oh well, if you could build me anything, want you to build me a faster horse, right?
Yeah,
And it was
there's
Henry Ford
it's
that
Henry Ford
basically,
that said that, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I
If I
mean,
asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Right?
exactly, whatever that analogy is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
The other one that I love that he says too is like, you can you can have any color you want as long as it's black, right? So
Yeah,
I think it
I
was
use that
Ford
with,
that said that. But
yeah, yeah, I use that with my kids when they are asking for something, or when a customer asks me for a phone color. It's like, hey, yeah, no problem, any color you want,
yeah,
as long as it's the blue one, because that's the only one I got. So you got to take
yeah,
it. Um, but yeah, no, in all seriousness, like I commend the commitment to that, where you're not really churning out um, commoditized products. You're really putting a specialized spin on things, and in a world of mundaneness and lack of creativity, it's good to hear that there's some of that out there still, that's making a business out of it. So hats off.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. Let's see how
Yeah.
far, let's see how far it'll go. To be honest, 14
Well,
months is still, still in its
that's still
infancy, right?
baby. That's
So
still you're still early. 14 months. You're just walking. If you're
yeah,
looking at
yeah,
human
yeah.
evolution. Sorry,
Evolution. Yeah.
yeah, I gotta get the words right. You're still learning to walk. But yeah, as hustle mode goes, and as we talk more, we'll reveal some more like newer things with us as we pertain to how we're evolving our personal journeys, and we can definitely get into that as we come up through the hustle mode progress.
Yeah,
So
it's funny because you're bringing up the hustle mode. So I just want to talk to something a little bit real quick because I don't think our
yeah,
audience really knows sort of what the background story on hustle mode really is, right? And a few years back when I was doing the digital marketing thing at the agency, I came up with this concept. It was kind of like getting a bunch of subject matter experts in a room that were all leaders in their areas of expertise and sort of sitting down and strategizing and brainstorming as far as, how we can work together collectively to create a unified force. And I think that was really the birthplace of hustle mode, right?
yeah,
You and I had actually come back a couple years later and we said, okay, well, why don't we do something with this, so to speak, and create something that can bring value to people and share our collective
yeah,
experiences and
agreed.
identify how we can actually how we can help. And for us, the Hustle Mode podcast and or videos are going to be just that. They're going to be a resource or resources that you can refer to, a little bit of song and dance with respect to our collective stories from time to time. But you know, I think it's going to be something that you're going to want to clue into or check in because we're going to be sharing pages from the chapters of the books that we've been going through, so to speak, and
Hmm.
writing on our own. So it's not necessarily a
Yeah,
carbon copy of somebody else's success story or tidbits of information from somebody else's award-winning New York Times bestseller. It's going to be, our own story sprinkled in
yeah,
with what's really happening, right?
yeah. And just to top that up, like I think one of the key things that will drive value for our audience is hearing from the people that we respect, and people within our circle that can really give experiences of things that they've had happen in their business journey. We're obviously not going to get into the depth in some cases as we would Neil and I in our journey, but we're definitely going to address a lot of people's journeys and struggles and successes, celebrate them and talk about them. We have some folks that we really want to talk to, and we really want to bring their stories and really talk to them about some of their successes and things that um, they can share with you as our audience. So I think hustle mode, hashtag hustle mode is got a long opportunity to drive a lot of value for people who choose to spend their time with us. Whether it be a shorter conversation or a long length discussion, kind of like what Neil and I are having, I think there's going to be some good value coming up, from my opinion.
Yeah. So Jay, what can we leave today's discussion and impart our viewers and listeners to as far as why don't we look at the work from home situation a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Obviously we can talk about the pre-pandemic or how we sort of pivoted during the pandemic. Why don't we touch on that? Because like this transition for yourself is fairly new as far as you work in the side hustle or that being your first priority now. What did
Yep.
you have to go through when this all sort of came back full circle?
Yeah. I guess I'll give the pandemic highlight reel, or the pandemic um, overview, and obviously hopefully you can share the same. But so pandemic, or what we know today as COVID-19 change ups, started for us in March. I had a trip booked to go to California, literally on the 14th of March, 2020. Um, we had the Airbnb booked. We had all the accommodations, the flights, everything. We were ready to roll. So when we started seeing things close down, to me, I say the real shoe dropped when Disney World said they're closed, or Disneyland said they're closed in LA, and I was like, cancel, we're done. Like, the Airbnb people, and again, don't want to throw people under the bus, but they didn't refund us our money. Right, I was a little upset about that. We didn't get a full refund from our host in California. From the fact that we canceled last minute. Right, Airbnb has a policy where if you cancel within a time frame, no refund can be issued. Right, and we canceled literally 4 days before we were about to roll. No, 2 days before we were about to roll, because things were starting to close down and things were getting crazy. There's a run on toilet paper, if you remember that, Neil, from the early days. So
Yeah.
things got crazy. Schools closed on the Friday. They sent everybody home on the Friday. We went to Costco on the Thursday, stocked up on everything, so we were good. But things started getting crazier. So we never had toilet paper issues or paper towel issues, Lysol wipe issues, because we went on the Thursday before things started shut. No, the Wednesday, because I think Thursday, Friday they shut everything down. Anyway, so the work from home thing began at that point for us. My wife, who's a elementary school teacher, and myself, who at that time was full into iLeague. Like, we were iLeagued up. That's all I was doing. So I was worried. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought maybe our business would slow down, or maybe I'd have to go get a job again, God forbid. I didn't know what was going to go down. But luckily, we shifted to work from home. I stayed home. She stayed home. Everybody was home. She continued doing her work with her class and whatnot, and she was able to get her screens. She had her Chromebook, which she brought home. She had her iPad Pro, the 12.9-inch screen, like the big guy, and then she had her Mac. So she was running like a stage production in our living room, and I was huddled up in the basement, kind of doing iLeague stuff still. So our office shut down. I didn't go to the office. My other partners didn't go to the office. We kind of just started working ourselves from home. And yeah, we were on Teams calls, Zoom calls. We were doing a lot of face-to-face, computer to computer, non-face-to-face interactions. Um, but iLeague started growing. Like, we started killing it. It was a weird time, and customers needed data because data became critical. We had a few school boards that were calling us up looking for phones and hotspots and internet connections, and tablets and a whole bunch of other things that we sell primarily. So it was a crazy transition. 2020 was the best year ever for iLeague. And it was just, again, we had a customer just blew up because they just needed a ton of hardware. They were doing a ton of research and development and product delivery. So we were able to capitalize on the situation of just needing to be connected. We had a few agencies, not-for-profit agencies, that just needed hubs because all their employees are home, and they're still home today. They're still using the service today, almost 1 year later. So it was a good transition, and the work from home piece, just the ability to just shift really quickly and be able to still do what we do. We didn't really skip a beat from an iLeague perspective. I know family wise, my kids stayed home. All of them were online. So we had one given time, 4 computers going, 15 screens. I looked one time on our Wi-Fi. I think we had like 35 devices connected on Wi-Fi at one time, whether it's like phones or, computers or PlayStations or whatever it happened to be. Like, it was all, and the kids were going to school, if you remember. Well, your kids aren't in school yet, but the kids were going to school like 2 hours a day, it seemed like. My wife was teaching like an hour a day. She'd go log on at 1 o'clock, ask anybody if they needed help. No one would say they need help. Peace, and we go do something else. So it was an interesting time, and like I said, iLeague was popping, so I had to be on some calls, and we had to do a bunch of things. So Fast forward to always to the end of the year when we started things opening up. Kids went back to school for like a minute. We moved houses in the middle of the pandemic. We actually sold our house and moved. We were one of those people that drove up all the real estate prices. Good luck buying a house now. Sorry, Neil.
Yeah, thanks.
Prices are up, my man. So yeah, it was an interesting transition, and you know, looking back on it, it was crazy times. There were good times, there was bad times, but the best of times. So, anyways, yeah, that's kind of high level the transition, my pandemic story. What's your pandemic story, man?
You're not gonna believe this.
Okay,
Like
I'm leaning
literally
in
not
here.
gonna believe this.
I'm Larry King in you here.
So I remember I was going to the grocery store
Mm.
in town, and I'm like, "What's going on, man? Like, is there a sale?"
Is there a sale?
Guy,
What's going on?
I'm not joking. I'm being 100% legit, straight up. You know, I don't know if I told you, I got two kids under 4 years old, right?
Mm.
Like it's organized chaos over here the best of times. You've seen them, but there's just like it's
Energy
insane.
levels, like regular energy, meals,
Yeah,
kids
it's
energy.
crazy.
It's
It's
next
like
level. It's up here.
so. You know, it's funny. So I went to the grocery store and I'm like, something's out of whack. Like something ain't right. Shelves are empty. People are like 2 or 3 carts. I'm like, and it's funny because I was chatting with a client, and I remember she was like, I'm like, how are things? She's like, I'm really worried. I'm like, why? What's going on? She's like, oh, this coronavirus, and I'm like, hmm, yeah, you know, I'm not really too concerned about it.
Only a couple cases.
It's not
It's
it's
like the
not
flu. It'll go away
it's
when it
not
gets
it's not
warm.
it's not here. It wasn't here. It wasn't here yet. Or at least we weren't hearing about it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And I said to her, I said, we should be okay, you know.
Yeah.
Fast forward now, like it's like look where we are. But anyways, yeah, I remember where I was, man. I was in the grocery store, and I was going nuts because couldn't get what I wanted to get, and I remember messaging the wife, and I'm like, "There's something going on here. Like we we need to we got to figure it out." So yeah, we're good, man. We're blessed, you know. There's so many people that weren't blessed to be able to work from home.
Yeah, that's true.
We were the wife was coming off of mat leave actually,
Mm.
so that's how fresh it is. She was going back to work. We were a little bit concerned because she's frontline staff, and that was a challenge in and amongst itself during this time. Daycare was a challenge during this time as well.
Yeah.
You know, and then putting yourself in the parental sort of situation where you have your young children, not necessarily, I don't know, you've had toddlers, it's been a couple of years, but they can't necessarily not put anything in their mouth and touch things with their hands and not touch their
Yeah,
face and all that
that's
stuff,
tough. And you
right?
can't put a face mask on a 2-year-old. Yeah.
It's surprisingly enough, my son and my daughter, they're pretty good, man. They're
Yeah.
when we do go out and we put face masks on them, they adhere to the rules right now, which
It's
is
good.
really interesting to see
Yeah.
because that wasn't taught. Like that was just straight observation on their front. And it's funny the amount of stuff that you can actually
Mm.
they notice, right? Just by them being around you. So it's interesting to see us when, especially when they
And
say,
they're in a world that's just different, right? They're growing up in a different world at a different time with different considerations and different things that potentially could be scary or unknown. Like that's one thing that my kids are, a little bit older,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, they grew up with certain things, right? And the way things are now, it's a completely different ball game, right? Like it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine about just the difference between some of the safety requirements of like kids booster seats now from when my kids were younger, and how much stricter they are. It's just like, I guess with anything, right? I guess it's a general blanket statement. I can say that you used to have to always, you had a bike helmet sometimes, but now it's not even a mandatory thing. But you're a bad parent if you don't put a helmet on your kid, right? Whereas back in the day, it was kind of like whatever. If the kid wants to
what
wear a helmet,
helmet?
they can. Exactly. So I don't want to get into that paradigm because there's always these.
What car seat? Yeah,
Like,
I didn't have a car seat growing up. What car
on a
seat are you
lap.
talking
You're
about?
on a. I didn't have a. Yeah, I didn't have a car seat growing up either, right? But
Barely
you know,
wore
you,
seatbelts back in the day. I think that was 80s when it came into the when you hear the click, you're safe, right? That whole
yeah,
campaign.
exactly. Like and that's a whole other conversation in itself. Like that's like we could go into the back in my day they didn't have it. Like that's a whole other thing, man. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let's not go there. But yeah, pandemics really changed us, man. It's you know, we're doing this over Zoom because we can't be sitting in the comfy red chairs. We're just being responsible and whatnot. But obviously, at the end of the day, eventually we're going to have to get back into it, and you know,
Okay, so let's
it'll
flip it,
be
right?
good.
Like, I mean, we understand what the hardships were, and obviously there's some drawbacks, and there's some silver linings that are taking place globally in the
Yep.
economy that's happening. Obviously, you were mentioning it. Like, I don't know if you went to go buy lumber recently, but geez, I feel for you if you got to redo your deck. Like, it's just insane. Like, lumber prices have gone through the roof. I should have
Yeah.
bought stocks like a long time ago on that. There's a lot of things I should have did. I told the wife the other day I should have we should have started a mask company just to deal with this. But again, I thought it was going to be a blip in the on the scene,
Yeah.
right? Like just a
Yeah.
little dot on the radar. So um,
Little be known 1 year later.
anyways,
Here
I
we
think it
are.
was Churchill that said it, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. You know what I mean? Like, and I try to instill that with some of the clients that I'm speaking to right now, because a lot of people are sort of in that paralyzed phase, at least for the first year. Now people are starting to wake up, right? So we're almost a year and a month into this whole pandemic situation,
Yeah. The
and
shutdowns and whatnot.
I'm seeing a lot of people just wake up, because the new reality is that they have budgets and they got to do something with that, and the world still turns and business still goes on, and
Yeah.
people still got to provide, and there's organizations that still have to hit targets, right? And how do you contribute, right? So I think for us, let's stay on the positive side of things. Let's look at three things that positively speaking that have identified during this pandemic. And
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll start because I'm putting you on the spot. So basically, I think the three things that I've noticed during this whole pandemic situation is one, the use of technology has really fast tracked the organizations and people's understanding and comfortable or familiarity to a completely different level.
Mm-hmm.
The willingness to talk tech with certain applications and just in the environment, I think that's opened up a lot of people's eyes, because what they may have been able to dance around before, now everything is just like you're full disclosure, you're wide open, right? If you don't know how to work this shit, you got to figure it out real quick, right? Number two, I think the people being on, I think that's a good point. Like I I'm
Mm-hmm.
not having any no shows on my meetings. Where are you going? Like you're home, you're working from home, unless you're in that situation where you are sharing your time between. I think you might have a no show because somebody's kids are home, or there's a situation that came up, or even still, like I'm hearing dogs in the background and kids
And
and
babies crying. Yeah.
baby, 100%, right? But
Yeah. Call a call center, right? That sometimes we call a call center in one of our major vendors or suppliers, and we've been on a call a couple of times. We've heard a baby in the background,
mhm.
and it doesn't. It's
He's
usually
not
you would say,
phased.
"Man, yeah, that's so unprofessional." But
Yep. And that brings me to the third point. Humanity as a whole has been a lot more empathetic, a lot more patient, and a hell of a lot more understanding, right? And that's just the way they needed to be from the outset. So it took a pandemic for us to come back to reality and be humane about how
yeah,
we're dealing with one another
I
and be
agree, man.
fully
100%.
transparent, right? Like it's crazy when you think about it, and you're grateful for it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's just we're better humans for this. We're better communicators for this, right? And it took a pandemic for that to happen. So those are my three. What are your three?
Yeah, no, I like I'll top up on the last one because the last one was my first one, is that people have been more empathetic and understanding, and people have been more courteous to one another. You know, the whole give people their distance and their space and give them their 6 feet of social distance. People have been really respectful of that. You know, when you go to a store and you see 5, 6 people only in the store at a time because of, occupancy restrictions. Hit the camera there. You know, people look in, they see, oh shit, there's 4 other people in there. Okay, you know what? I'm going to chill outside and just wait and be courteous and wait my turn. long lineups at grocery stores, that you're seeing because of the changing of the restrictions, even at like a Costco, or I waited 45 minutes at Nike the other day just to get a pair of shoes. And I was cool about it. I stood in line. My wife walked around. She stood in line. I walked around. 45 minutes was done. We were in the store. We bought she bought 3 pairs of shoes, man. Crazy. They're on sale. Um, all like Nike Airs and whatnot. So again, like we took advantage of the fact that we had time. And that's the other thing too, is humanity, courtesy, and then more family time and outdoor access. I think that's my number two, is people are taking advantage of the outdoors. They're doing things that they were too busy for before, because they had to run their kid to basketball, or run their kid to hockey, or run their kids to dance class. They had so many more activities that people were indulging in, and the world was getting so busy. Everyone was so busy. Like, you talk to somebody, what are you doing? Oh, I'm busy. Like, I got dance, and then I got hockey, and then I got power skating, and then I got Girl Guides. It's like this kid has a job. Their job is the activities that you're giving them. It's
Yeah.
People were so busy. And I know from, my kids are at that age now where they kind of define their own activities if they want to do them at all. But I knew one of my former colleagues, was talking to her about her daughter. She'd run her daughter like 5 or 6 different things in a week. It was nuts. And it's like, when does this kid have any time to be a kid? When does this kid not have an activity that they have to do? When's they're not tutoring? So I think the pandemic really shifted and allowed us as a society to kind of get out and do that stuff, to be outdoors, to be connected in different ways, where we didn't have all this running around to do. So that's my number two. And number three is seeing new industries emerge. Like you see, like you mentioned, with the masks and the disinfectant and all that stuff, those industries have really emerged. And then you're seeing things where you're having, like, if you're a plexiglass investor, or if you invested in plexiglass or any sort of barrier type technology, you'd be backing up the Brinks truck, to use that stupid analogy. You'd be just getting paid hand over fist, because everybody needs these things. And it's been established that this is a way to enhance social distancing when actual physical distancing is impossible. So, the pandemic's really shifted the world to some of these new industries that didn't really exist before, or that didn't really have a need for. So good and bad, will they last? Will they be around? One other thing that people don't talk about, that is an interesting result of COVID, is semiconductors. So, a little more technical, but semiconductor availability globally is in a tremendous constraint right now. Just like you said, Neil, with regard to what was that thing you were saying that you can't get your hands on anymore? What was it? I can't remember. Anyways, I'm just saying that there are some things that are incredibly constrained, just because of the fact that COVID's eaten up all the supply. Oh, lumber. There you go.
Mm.
Buying wood for your deck. Yeah. So buy composite. It's more expensive, but it lasts longer. But yeah, there's certain things right now that globally have created this void for availability. So, pandemic's done some good things, some bad things. But got to deal with it because we're here, right?
So what do you say the three things that's changed during the pandemic for you?
For me personally,
Personally, professionally, it doesn't matter.
um, I think with the pandemic, I'm home more. So to your point of being available for things, doesn't mean I'm more available. I'm just home more. Um, I've become a little bit more uh, cynical of things. I'm a little bit,
Such
I
as?
challenge things. I challenge things a little bit more, like the idea of COVID spreading on surfaces. You touch a doorknob and it's on the doorknob, and then you go home and you infect your whole family. That's early research. Debunked that a couple times. I'm not an anti-vaxxer or anything like that, so I'm keen to see what impact vaccination has on Canada, and it sucks that Canada's so slow to roll it out. So, have I changed? Maybe put on some weight. That's one thing. But that's a lot of people. Starting to get that right though. I got a treadmill, so we're good. Peloton, no less. But yeah,
We're not sponsored by Peloton, by the way.
no,
So
we're
it's
not,
just
not at this stage. But yeah, like I think personally, I don't think I'm a different person per se. Like I haven't started eating and running and doing all this stuff. But I
Oh no,
think,
no, I'll just say this. So what are three
mm,
things that that's changed? Like it's been 14 months, right? Like
mm,
you've changed during that time. Your wife's changed, your family dynamics has changed.
yeah,
But personally, what are three things that have changed? Good or
ooh,
bad? Doesn't matter.
tough. I think I
Well,
appreciate a
this
routine now. So I
okay.
appreciate the fact that I can adhere to a routine. Get up a certain time. I do my yoga in the morning.
Mhm.
I try to get to work at the same time. I appreciate the routine of having a routine because with pandemic everything's all over the place.
Yep.
And running your own business, as people will find, you routines are your friend as it pertains to productivity. You want to get
Mhm.
shit done, have a routine to make sure that all the shit that you can optimize, or I guess optimize is a good word of putting it, are executed in a earlier in the day, right? We'll get into daily routines. I think we got some time and topics coming
Mhm.
up in the next couple pods to talk about
Mhm.
routines and daily habits. So I'd say, yeah, I love a good routine. That's one thing that's changed. Another thing that's changed is I don't is I consume a lot more content than I ever did,
Right.
whether it's podcasts, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's books online.
Mhm.
I'm on the Clubhouse link, so I listen to that from time to time.
Mhm. Mhm.
I've kind of pulled that back a little bit because it's not. I'm trying to get value from it, but I don't have time to give value, so it's hard to get value from it. So that's
Right.
a whole other discussion though, about Clubhouse if you're not familiar with it, Android users.
Yeah, I'm not a
But
fancy iPhone user, so I don't know yet.
yeah, I don't know what it is. They're trying to monetize the audience. iPhone, it's easier to do it,
I
but they're
I
not.
told you before. I think Apple just created this Clubhouse to drive sales up, so exclusivity, so that they could be 100% dedicated to their audience. It's not a bad play, right? If you think about it. But anyways, we digress. Sorry, give me
Angry
the third
Birds.
one real quick.
Okay, so we got routine. The other one was
Consumption,
uh,
consumption.
consumption,
Uh-huh.
and then the last thing that I've changed is um, I think family time. Like we during the initial pandemic, which a lot of families can say, we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner together every day, like steady. Well, the kids didn't really eat breakfast, but definitely lunch and dinner every day together. So I think the family dynamic during the time has improved, and I think we've gotten closer as a family because I have teenagers, like they're, and some of our audience may have teenagers as well. Teenagers and adults generally are like oil and water, right? They don't necessarily mix well, and they definitely aren't wanting to spend time with one another. But the pandemic is really, and maybe it's the connection I have with my kids, I don't know, but the pandemic's really had allowed us to be more as a cohesive, you know, spending time with each other family, where again we may not have been that way because everybody would be activities and different things they're doing, school and basketball, all this other stuff. People are going, there we go. People are going in different directions. Hands, man, hands that everywhere. See, again, look at that, man. Hold on a second. There we go. People are going in different directions, so family time. So
We
that's
need a
three.
blooper reel.
I know. Jeez, that was a long answer. Okay, clap. Now, tell me, Neil, what are the three things that have changed for you during pandemic times? What do you got?
I've gone on a little bit of a yo-yo change. I went from like slug mode, right? Like
Slug mode.
literally everything was shut down. Like there was a lot of things that we do is in public spaces. You have to remember, right? So like
Hmm.
I'm picking up the phone, I'm calling like thousands of people. I'm not getting any return. So it's
Hmm.
like you're going through this motion. So when I say slug mode, imagine doing this for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and not getting any results. My wife would come home and be like, I'm talking to myself over here, like literally talking to myself because all I'm doing is leaving messages on the voicemail, sending emails, doing LinkedIn voice messages. Like it's just like insane.
Yeah.
So
You
I,
start to challenge yourself and it's like, how can I make this more fun for myself?
well, it's
Leaving
not.
these
It's not
voice.
only that. It's like you
Hmm.
finish that day, and I just turned into a zombie because I was like, okay, I'm just gonna disassociate myself from everything and try to find an escape. So my escapism was like vegging out and consuming like Netflix, or going through some type of
Mm.
binge fest mode, right?
Well,
Eating
I forgot to
stuff that
mention
I
that
shouldn't.
that was part of it as well, like the consumption, right?
Well,
Consumption,
you
not just of
consumed, right?
consume of Netflix too. How many shows I've watched? Maybe we'll talk about that one time. Let's go to a rundown of how many pandemic Netflix series we've watched. I've watched a couple, man, like seven, 8 series deep, like
Yeah.
crazy. So, anyways,
Yeah, no. So and then so my zoning out would be like an escape, right? Actually,
yeah,
I've got a PS4. I haven't played it since my son was born, and I just started tapping into that just as another way to disconnect and
yeah,
escape. Um so yeah, I guess there's escapism, right? Trying to find a solution on that front. But then also like you said, it was just picking back up on changing the routine, right? Because I used to be in the gym at like 5:30, get an hour and a half workout in, and then start my day fresh. And I was going a little bit crazy. We used to play basketball 3 times a week, right? For two
yeah.
hour sessions. So
Monday,
the
Wednesday,
whole
Friday.
the whole dynamic changed when the wife had to go back to work, and she's finally on a day shift, and we've never been on a day shift together since we've been married for 7 years. So it's interesting on that front, but the change with the morning routine for the kids and myself in the morning, right? Like that's completely new. Um, trying to get them ready and trying to get them out the door and try to start my day at times when before I had the luxury of sort of being on my own clock and easing into my day and doing some reading and going to the gym, some self care and self meditation and all that
Yeah,
jazz. It's not there, right?
yeah,
But then just finding that routine again. So like there's a little bit of uncertainty that takes place, and then I purchased a piece of equipment for my house now, so I don't have an excuse anymore.
hmm
Getting back
hmm
on that morning routine schedule and
yeah,
trying to find a kid's routine schedule, which is challenging for toddlers, to be honest. But nonetheless, it's about balance, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So I think Jay, we're gonna wrap it up today. I think we've provided a little bit of a quick overview for the folks here today, and hopefully they found some value from some tidbits of information that they didn't know beforehand.
Yeah,
I think the one
agreed.
thing that we didn't talk about was like sort of like a specific tech stack with regards to technology being incorporated into our daily routines. But I think we can dig down a little bit deeper as far as what we're using and how we're using it later on, aside from the obvious, Zoom and so on and so forth. But
Make a note
I,
of that for sure.
yeah, I think we should wrap it up and
Yeah, call it a night.
let the
It's
let,
Sunday.
let the, let the people know what's on deck, man. So what's on deck for the next episode?
Well, like you were mentioning, we're going to talk about the tech stack of technologies that we collectively use, and maybe a little bit about some of the aspirational technology that we hope to use. Get into some of the hardware, some of the software. We'll talk about that, and we'll do some top threes. I think that's a good way of really sharing what we value as it relates to the tech stack. So we can use that format to talk about that. I do want to get in a little more about some of the guests that we want to have. I think there's value in talking about what is upcoming for our listeners and viewers of what we want to bring forward as value, and what we're hoping that people will really tune in for. We'll try to make those very very buttoned down, sorry, and ensure that we're really driving value and asking the right questions from our guests to make sure that they're giving the value that they think and know is important to the people that are listening, and that they want to share. Right, we want to have people share their journey, share their story, share their struggle. It's always good, right? You never get anywhere without sharing struggle, and struggle is one of the best ways to indicate and prove success. So we'll definitely talk about that.
I like that
So
idea. I think what we should do is just layer it in again because we were going live on Insta before our shows. And I think what we could do the next go round is introduce the guest as far as the industry that that individual is repping, and
Mhm.
then ask the audience specifically what they would like to gain from this particular person or this vertical as far as industry knowledge is concerned, so that we could sort of layer that into the talk.
Got it. Got it. So we'll work on that as
Yeah,
a way to make sure that we're getting people engaged in what we're doing, because engagement drives interest and interest drives engagement.
cool, brother.
All
Listen,
right,
it's
man.
always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah.
Enjoy your evening.
And look,
It's been great.
Bruno says hello. Look, there he is. Bruno's up. Bruno,
There he
there
is.
he is. See,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
ready. I take him
So,
for a walk, man. All right,
yeah.
man. Signing off. Talk
All right,
soon.
brother. Yeah.
All right.
Cheers.